Hi, I'm Jay Edidin.
And I'm Miles Stokes.
And we're the hosts of Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men, a weekly podcast all about the ins, the outs, and the retcons of comics' greatest superhero soap opera.
We're also the hosts of Jay and Miles Review the X-Men,
which you're watching right now,
where we talk about the X books that come out each week.
This week we've got the books of November 23rd, 2016, so I guess let's kill Cyclops.
We'll start, however, with X-Men 92, number 9, written by Chad Bowers and Chris Sims, with art by Alti Fermantia and colors by Matt Milla. So as it turns out, this is the penultimate issue, I love that word, penultimate, of X-Men 92. 10 is going to be the last one, and I gotta say, this feels like a series that wanted to keep going for longer. I'm really impressed with how Sims and Bowers have managed to take so many plot lines and cram them all together in something that feels relatively organic, but this is... decompressed, it is not.
Yeah, there is a lot going on, and the coherency suffers for it. And a consistent aspect of this series, I think one that's very much the case in this issue as well, is that it's got great moments, and the moments and the punctuation are better than the stuff in between.
I would agree, yeah. I mean, it definitely captures the feel of the 90s in the best ways, and also in ways that are a little bit... I don't know if parody is not the right word, but I guess it's sort of affectionately jesting with the excesses of it. So, for instance, we have a little more Adam X, the X-Dream in here, and every single moment of his is solid gold. The
trouble with jesting with or parodying the 90s is that one of the things that you end up having to cope with is, again, the 90s just involves stuff that's just, there's too much.
There absolutely
too many
is.
plot lines going on at once, too high a volume of material to fit into issues, etc. And in that case, that's one of those things where the line between homage and actual pitfall is very, very difficult to discern.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I guess we won't really see, what this book would have been like with more room to breathe, with more issues. As it is, yeah, I definitely agree with your take.
We know a bit about what it would have been. Like we
have talked to
some
Chris,
places that would have gone, and I am, for one, disappointed that we're not going to be able to see those things play out.
Yeah. That said, there's fun stuff to be had here. I definitely wish that we got to see Scott and Jean after the last time we saw them was with the X-Men 2099 characters.
I know.
But the handling of Apocalypse in this, the way that ties in with what is going to turn out to be the big threat behind absolutely everything, the fact that X-Force shows up at the exact right time to do the exact wrong thing and ruin everything, like that all feels like not just the 90s, but X-Men 92. I mean, between the miniseries and this series, the book has a feel. The book has sort of a way it tends to work. This is consistent with it. So if you've been enjoying X-Men 92, I think you still absolutely will. If you haven't picked it up or if it hasn't really been your jam, this issue won't really change your mind. What it does is it sets up the climax and end of the series. I'm curious to see how it goes. I don't know. It's fun.
I feel like it would be neglectful to not talk about Fermantia and Milla again, because we've brought them up every review, but God, they're amazing.
Yeah, the art team on this is just phenomenal.
And they're an amazing, it's an amazing team overall. Like, I would love to see Bowers and Sims and Fermantia continuing to work together after this series is over, because their styles are so well mutually suited.
Well, and Fermantia, we've seen, can do quite varied work herself. I mean, she did that, Star-Lord and Kitty Pryde series in Secret Wars.
Yeah, with Sam Humphries.
Still recognizably her work, but a very different feel to it that suited that book in the way that her art
A lot of that, I think, was the coloring.
Yep, I would agree. So anyway, yeah, we'll see. One more to go. This will have been a fun series. Maybe it's going out before it would have stretched on into being less fun. Don't know, but this is what we have, so let's appreciate it.
And if there's anything 90s, it's untimely endings. Next up, we have All New X-Men Annual Number 1. This has 2 stories. First, Edie Goes on a Date, written by Sina Grace, with art by Corey Smith and colors by Andres Massa. And The Last of Us, The Last of X, written by Rex Ogle, with art by Andrea Briccardo and colors by Rochelle Rosenberg. So, as annuals go, what did you think?
I really enjoyed both the stories in this. I mean, it fit the tone of All New X-Men, this sort of playful teenager fun with a little bit of angst thrown in and some action as well.
You're just excited because you got some New Mutants.
We so got some New Mutants. Okay, I mean, we'll talk about the first story first, but the second New Mutant story, I freaking love.
Do you want to talk about it first?
The hell with it. Let's talk about it first. So that's The Last of Us, The Last of X, which it just brings me right back to that wonderful, beautiful game. So this is all about a character we haven't seen in a while. I want to say since the Fearless Defenders series, series from ages ago, although she might have shown up more recently, briefly.
Yeah, it's been a really long time.
It has. So we get to see Danielle Moonstar, Mirage. Now, her powers have been gone since House of M, like her illusion-y powers, but the Valkyrie stuff is still there. That factored in heavily to Fearless Defenders, and it factors in heavily here. The idea of her basically being almost a hound for mutants who have been infected by the Mpox and are thus going to die, using her Valkyrie death sight to find them, cool idea. The fact that that causes essentially continual panic attacks in her, cool idea, and consistent with what we saw when her powers went a little haywire and got too extreme after Inferno. This is clearly a story created by people who know the New Mutants and love the New Mutants, and I appreciate the hell out of that.
So the other story, Edie Goes on a Date, is fun, touching, and sweet. We haven't seen a lot of Edie-centric stories in All New X-Men, and that's a shame because she's a fantastic character, and she's a character who ends up in supporting roles way too often. Seeing her get to take the helm and actually narrate is always a plus, and it's always something that I look for, and this is a story that I think handles it well. I also love the art on it.
Yeah, totally. So one of the ways I determine if I like an X-Men artist is if it's a story with Cyclops and Iceman, do they look distinctly different once you get rid of the Port's visor?
Right.
And in this case,
Can you tell
they
them
do.
apart from the back is another one?
Yes, exactly. Because otherwise they're just sort of two mostly slim white dudes with light brown, dark blondish hair. And
Remember when they had almost identical uniforms with the blue field and the white X?
In X Factor?
In X Factor, and sometimes they'd just be miscolored and they'd be completely indistinguishable.
That was unfortunate. There was an issue of Power Pack where that happened, and Cyclops looked like Iceman in one panel, and it made everything really confusing and took away a lot of the emotional heft. Why do I know these things?
I mean, it's your job.
Okay, that's why I know these things.
It's literally your job to know these things.
Still, surprised that stuck out. But yeah, and visually also, man, the facial expressions in this are solid.
Oh yeah, they are delightful.
And the fact that the characters actually look like characters. They don't just look like generic, attractive teenage boy and or girl number 1 or B. Like, Edie looks like Edie. She doesn't look like any character I've ever seen, and she still looks like a person and appealing and expressive, and it's great.
Yeah, man. Mark Bagley is good on this book. Corey Smith has a lot of the same energy, but honestly, I wish he were the main artist on the series after reading this.
Yeah,
he's so good, and he's got almost exactly the same strengths as Bagley, but he does them better. Which is saying something, because Bagley is very, very good at what he does. But Smith just blew us out of the water.
Mm-hmm. Oh, can we go back a little to the New Mutant story? Because there was a thing I wanted to talk about. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we mentioned it was about Mirage. Ilyana Rasputin is sort of, I mean, she's in it much less.
Yes, and she's so good. She's so good. Specifically,
the friendship between Ilyana and Danny. Again, this story was made by people who know New Mutants, and they get it. That sort of sometimes gentle, sometimes a little sharper antagonism is right there, but with the warmth behind it.
Yeah, the dryness. New Mutants is one of those series where it feels like the relationships are characters in themselves. You don't need to just write Mirage right and Magic right. You need to write their dynamic right, and this is so good.
They even referenced that time that they were worried about getting in trouble with Headmaster Magneto.
Which time?
Well, any time, because everyone always forgets the Headmaster Magneto era, and it lasted for like years and years and years. So kudos for that. So yeah, this annual, I mean, it's good stuff. 2 totally different stories. I don't know why there was a Mirage story in All New X-Men, but I'm glad it happened.
Finally is Death of X #4. Written by Charles Soule and Jeff Lemire, with pencils by Aaron Kuder and Javier Garron, inks by Jay Leiston and Javier Garron, and colors by Maury Hollowell and J. David Ramos. So I'm going to do a very brief spoiler-free review, and then this is going to get super spoiler-heavy. We will let you know when that is, and the next thing after this is the pick of the week, so you can skip ahead to that via the timestamp below if you don't want spoilers for Death of X. Spoiler-free review, some of it was good. The way that Cyclops' actual death played out in the context of that, in context of the series, I think was very good.
It was interesting. That was what I was looking for. Interesting, and it totally did that.
The other thing we had hoped this series would do was tie up one of the big mysteries that had been plaguing us since Secret Wars.
The Noodle Incident.
It didn't.
That said, the writing and the art, given what this book had to do, and that I don't think any book could have fully done it, I think the creative team did a really stellar job. I think they did the best job that they really could have. This book, it's good. It's better than I thought it could be.
It's really, really good. And it does, I mean, look, there is nobody who is more invested in this one than me, probably. And I feel like it did a character who means a tremendous amount to me justice. And I think it was handled well, and I think it was handled the only way it could have been handled well. I think any other approach to it would have felt like it was falling short no matter what it was.
It also sets up an interesting what comes next. The way this resolves is in some ways what I expected, in some ways not what I expected, and I'm curious where this is going to go.
The art throughout this is great. Cooter and Garone are a really good team, but I think special attention and special call-outs should go to the colorists, who just do a spectacular, spectacular job and who carry a lot of the emotional and narrative weight of the story. Okay, on to the spoilers.
Spoilers.
We're going to say spoilers a few more times just to give the rest of you time to pause.
I think you can hit space, maybe. I think that'll do it. Or just
it depends on what else you have going
lines.
on.
Yes.
Yeah, but you can pause, skip ahead, whatever. Okay, spoilers. So, I was right. I called it. I didn't swear, YouTube.
You almost
But
did.
I called it. I totally called it. I'm going to put up a big caption when we edit this that says, Jay was right.
You have a pin of that, don't you?
I do. I have several, but I'm not going to put that on the video because it's harder than a caption. Cyclops has, in fact, been dead since the first issue.
He has, and that means everything he's done, even the big grand death speech he has in this, which is the perfect big grand Cyclops death speech, it was all Emma.
Yep.
And what this does to me is it makes Emma Frost, already a fascinating character, the most fascinating she has ever been in the entire history since she showed up right before the Dark Phoenix saga.
Emma and Scott's relationship is really amazing, really interestingly written, and one of the more dynamic and interesting relationships in the Marvel Universe. It's also, I think, one of the few pointedly adult relationships in the Marvel Universe. You have a lot of people who have been pining after each other since they were teenagers and have on and again, off again relationships, and the two of them together feel like grown-ups in ways that not a lot of characters do. And yeah, this for all of the people who have been sitting there frustrated that they haven't been seeing that, and at the way that ended during Bendis's run, this is kind of your resolution right here.
When we talked to Charles Soule in the episode of our show that we did where we interviewed him, he said that one of the things he was most excited about and proudest of in this series was the handling of Scott and Emma.
Yeah.
And having read this, like, I have mixed feelings about the series, but that part right there, he was dead on. He has done an incredibly good job at writing these characters and at giving Cyclops what, at least for the foreseeable future, maybe a send-off. I mean, I'm sure they'll bring him back at some point because everybody comes back. Adult Cyclops, yes. And taking Emma from a character who was already dynamic and just throwing her so far in an unexpected direction in a way that feels completely earned and completely believable.
There are also a lot of subtle cues that I noticed in this issue, I think, because Garone tends to exaggerate facial expressions more than Cooter.
He does, yeah.
And I'm going to go back and see, but one of the great storytelling details in this, and one of the clues that I suspect might have been there in other issues, but was definitely here, is that at moments when Emma is distracted, and only when she's distracted, she and Scott always have the same facial expression.
Yeah, like even when it's an expression
That's
that Scott
so
Summers would never have.
Good. Yeah, they're just exactly the same. And and when she's focusing on him, when he's acting and doing big deal stuff, it's different. But when he's just in the background reacting, he just mirrors her. And it's such a subtle, such an effective play.
Yeah, the art's solid. One thing I really like, this is going to sound so random, the texture of people's costumes. There's a panel with Black
I know
Bolt,
exactly
which just
what
looks
you
like
mean.
real costumey stuff. Even the weird spandex that Cyclops wears looks like it's an actual like fabric.
Again, I think the coloring team we cannot talk enough about how well they've done on this book, and how much the appeal of the book goes to them and how well they've handled things. Our page of the week, our pick of the week, which is actually a 2-page spread of the week, because come on, I mean, yeah, it has a lot to do with that. But yeah, they've just done a stellar, spectacular job. So I was in this one largely for the character stuff, for the death of Cyclops stuff. Let's talk about the noodle incident. So that was good. It gets an A for that.
Yes.
So here's the big thing Cyclops did. He found Alchemy, who you may remember from way the hell back in X Factor.
Moment of silence for Alchemy.
He was a good kid.
He was a good kid.
He was a good kid. There are some trolls who are never going to get turned back now.
Oh, jeez, you're totally right. They're just going to be in that park forever.
Oh yeah, Alchemy died.
Yeah, and it was sad.
It was genuinely sad. It was good. But
better than when Madrox died.
What Cyclops did What Cyclops did was get alchemy and organize a group of mutants to render a Terrigen cloud inert.
One of the 2 Terrigen clouds on Earth, as I recall.
They did not harm anyone in the process of doing this. They made sure that the Terrigen cloud didn't become toxic to Inhumans or humans. It just became non-toxic to everybody, including mutants.
Which means it also doesn't cause Terrigenesis anymore.
This is, I guess that's the big thing Cyclops did,
see,
that people are just,
it's
people
weird.
are describing him as a mass murderer in context of something during the gap. If they tied it back to Avengers vs. X-Men, to the Phoenix 5 stuff, you could justify that. Mm-hmm. But this is just silly. This just renders a lot of stuff leading up to it ridiculous. It's like if the noodle incident was, I made pasta, and then I drained it. Then I ate it slightly messily?
I can understand why the Inhumans are furious. I can absolutely understand that, because to them, the Terrigen Cloud is basically God. It's the center of their entire culture and spirituality and identity and everything.
The Inhumans are jerks.
Well, yes, that's true. The Inhumans are often jerks.
Huge jerks.
The fact that the public has turned against Cyclops,
Yeah,
the
that
fact
doesn't
that
make
all
sense.
mutants have turned against Cyclops, yes, they did make it so that the Inhumans were pissed off, but then Storm negotiated a truce with the Inhumans. So what's the deal? What happened in between? Did anything happen in between? Or was this just basically Marvel editorial not being able to reconcile the 2 biggest plot points of the modern X era?
So I've got a couple no-prize justifications.
Okay.
And one thing that I want to bring up, which is that to make this series work, Cyclops kind of had to go out a hero.
Yes, and he does,
Right, so that limits what they're able to do as far as, mass murder. Mm-hmm. But...
So strange sentence.
Yeah, well... We live with our limitations. So one thought, these are my possible no prize rationalizations here. One is that the Inhumans have a super good propaganda machine. They're pissed off. They basically have just spent the last 8 months aggressively besmirching Cyclops' reputation and pretty much lying. The other possibility in connection to that is that we saw the first recorded cases of Mpox in this series. Cyclops' team discovered those. Mm-hmm. If someone concluded, and there weren't recorded cases outside of private communication among the X-Men, and then Cyclops' larger mass communication to the world, someone might have concluded at random and artificially, and this doesn't make a lot of sense, that somehow what Cyclops had done to the Cloud, or what Alchemy had done to the Cloud, had caused Mpox. But that doesn't work. That doesn't make sense. And both of those rely on either active and aggressive malice that we haven't seen played out, or a series of ridiculous coincidental errors.
Now, we do have Inhumans vs. X-Men coming out relatively soon, but my understanding with that was that it takes place in the present day, not during this big 8-month gap between Secret Wars and the current Marvel era. So I don't think that could be what explains if anything else happened.
The other question is we've seen, the antipathy towards Cyclops from the X-Men.
Right.
For that period, and based on, again, this sits just exactly, the scene we see of his funeral sits roughly as easy with that as the This is the Mutant Revolution scene in X-Men number 600. It doesn't make sense.
Brief aside about that funeral, the fact that Emma's in her diamond form at the gravesite.
Yeah.
Because, she turns off her feelings when she does that.
Yeah.
Interestingly, she then goes into her normal human form when she shows Havoc what really happened.
Yeah.
Which means essentially I got the impression that she feels great about the way she handled this. She feels like she did Cyclops justice. And, in a way, I think maybe this is something that he would have done, because it worked. Yes, it made the Inhumans sad about their cloud god, but it saved a whole bunch of lives, presumably.
No, Emma was right.
Emma was right. Add that to the Magneto and Cyclops t-shirts.
Well, Magneto wasn't right, per se.
Valid points, right.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 issues and an annual. Jay, what's our favorite this week?
Our pick of the week is, and kind of has to be, Death of X number 4.
Yeah.
While we have misgivings about the Noodle incident's larger relevance, the story itself within this issue, within this miniseries, does what it sets out to do, and does it really, really well.
Yeah, I think it's easily the best issue of the entire miniseries.
It's an important event, but it's also a very, very well-told story. Visually, narratively, in every aspect. What's our panel of the week?
Our panel of the week is, in fact, from Death of X number 4.
You don't say.
And we mentioned that it was going to be a 2-page spread, and this one right here the way it's laid out, I think, is beautiful. Because, okay, what we have here is we have a little British kid. Well, not that little. He got older.
He's in his 20s.
We have a 20s-ish British kid falling through a cloud and turning it red.
Yeah, the big dramatic event happening in this spread is a cloud changing color.
Right. But the fact is, this is a big deal event-wise. This is a big deal as far as what it means, and it's also alchemy dying, even though we don't know that until the page turn after this. And
honestly, I knew it the second he said he didn't touch the cloud at all. You never have a line like that unless you're going to have an ironic reveal after it.
I'm a leaf on the wind.
Exactly.
But the fact that we have this sort of upside-down L shape of what's going on with the cloud, the fact that it's not symmetrical, the fact that we have all these other panels scattered about of the different characters doing different things, it makes it seem busy, it makes it seem tense, it makes it clear that everything is going on at once and that it impacts everyone. Look how everybody is turned toward the events that are in the center. Like, laid out like that, it draws you into the center. It almost makes you not want to look at anything else, and that's what it should be. It gives the entire thing just that much weight. Also, these artists draw a pretty good green cloud turning into a red cloud as clouds turning into clouds.
They color it particularly well as well.
That they do. Also, Sunfire looks so sad in his dumb mask. Look at that, on the right side.
It's kind of a sad-looking mask.
Poor Sunfire. I think he's going to quit the team after this. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching.
If you like what you've seen here but would prefer it without our faces, check out our podcast, Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men. New episodes come out every week at explainthexmen.com, also on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. What have we got for them this week?
This week is a weird one because toward the end of 1989, Excalibur, New Mutants, and X-Factor all had fill-in issues in the middle of giant stories. So we're going to talk about those. Some are good, some are not so good, but we actually had a lot of fun recording this one. I think you're going to have fun listening to it. Check it out.
That podcast, these video reviews, and everything at explainthexmen.com are brought to you by our Patreon subscribers. We are an entirely listener-supported podcast. That's what lets us stay on the air and entirely ad-free. And it's thanks to those folks that we can make this happen. If you want to join their ranks, which you totally should, you can do that at the link either above or below this video, depending on where you're watching it. I also want to add, because a bunch of people have asked, the reason that there are t-shirts gone from the Redbubble store is that they are now in our TeePublic shop. And I'll stick that link up on the website, but for now I'll also drop it in the notes below this video.
Mm-hmm. In the meantime, we will see you next week in this brave new post-Cyclops world where there was a cloud that was green and now it's a cloud that's red. And it was drawn really awesomely. See you next time.